Is Neil deGrasse Tyson a closet flat earther? Back in 2006, long before the flat earth movement blew up, Neil deGrasse Tyson was already taking down the lies of heliocentrism. In his book, Death by Black Hole and Other Cosmic Quandaries, Tyson wrote, "We know the cloud wants to collapse under its own weight to make one or more stars. But rotation, as well as the turbulent motion within the cloud, work against that fate. So too does the ordinary gas pressure you learned about in high school chemistry class. Galactic magnetic fields also fight collapse. They penetrate the cloud and latch on to any free-roaming charged particles contained therein, restricting the ways in which the cloud will respond to its self-gravity. If none of us knew in advance that stars exist, frontline research would offer plenty of convincing reasons for why stars could never form." For those who don't know, mainstream cosmology says stars form from rotating clouds of gas collapsing in on themselves. How the Big Bang produced rotating clouds of gas molecules from an explosion during which everything moved directly out from the singularity is beyond common sense in the first place. But once you've invented rotating gas clouds in space, it makes your story that they collapse in on themselves even harder to swallow, because the centrifugal force of the rotation will fight against collapse. Tyson rightly points this out in his book. He also points out that ordinary gas pressure will fight against collapse. Why? Because gas pressure is stronger than gravity. And the more the gas was compressed by gravity, the hotter it would become, increasing its repelling force significantly. Secular cosmologists are well aware of these problems, and some have even proposed that shock waves from supernova give gravity the extra push it needs to collapse the cloud and form a star. But a supernova requires the explosion of an already existing star, so they are appealing to already existing stars to explain the creation of stars. So as Tyson aptly points out in his book, cutting-edge science says that stars, as the nuclear fireballs they imagine them to be, could not form materialistically. But Neil also took down the Earth's atmosphere at the same time, and for the same reasons, because it's also a story of centrifugal force and the repelling force of gas molecules being overcome by the much weaker force of gravity. And ever since openly trashing the mainstream narrative on star formation, Tyson has been taking down other heliocentric proofs one by one. For example, he thoroughly destroyed the Eratosthenes story by saying the same observation could be made on a flat Earth.
There was a famous experiment conducted by Eratosthenes. And there are two cities in the old world, and one of them, they knew that at 12 noon on a particular day of the year, that the sun was directly overhead and you could see the bottom of a well.
How can we use this observation to see if Earth's surface is curved? We needed another well. Turns out we can't see the bottom of both wells at the same time. What might explain this? Well, there are two possible explanations. First, we could have a flat Earth with a sun that's small and close by, so that the light hits the second well at an angle. Or second, we could have a curved Earth. Turns out with just two wells, there's enough wiggle room for both explanations to fit our observations. Eratosthenes only had two wells.
So in one fell swoop, Neil completely erased Eratosthenes from the ball Earth argument. But his flat Earth support was far from over. He also destroyed the claims of anyone who's ever said they've detected the curve of the Earth from the Earth.
Listen, B.O.B., once and for all. The Earth looks flat because, one, you're not far enough away at your size. Two, your size isn't large enough relative to Earth to notice any curvature at all. It's a fundamental fact of calculus and non-Euclidean geometry. Small sections of large curved surfaces will always look flat to little creatures that crawl upon it.
In other words, nobody on the Earth has ever had a rational reason to assume the Earth is round, since it has only ever appeared flat and stationary to our senses. But what about people who've gone high above the Earth? Surely we can see the curve from way up there, right, Neil?
Oh, okay, so if the Earth were actually this size, the International Space Station would be orbiting about a half an inch above the surface. And that dude who jumped out of a perfectly good balloon, what's his name? Felix Baumgartner. He would have been about 2 millimeters above the surface of this globe. That's his edge of space jump. I don't have a problem if he does it, but the honesty of it would greatly diminish what I think people thought he was actually doing. And not only that, they made sure to photograph him standing there with a really wide-angle lens, which curves horizontal lines. So in the photo, you see this curvature of Earth's surface, and he said, wow, he's in space, look at that. No, he's not. At that height, you don't see the curvature of the Earth if you are 2 millimeters above this beach ball. You just don't. That stuff is flat.
So if Neil says it's flat from Baumgartner's height of 128,000 feet, then he's clearly just destroyed all the claims from people who say they've seen the curve from mountains and airplanes, right? And in doing so, he also exposed the deceptive practice of using fisheye lenses to present apparent curvature when there is no real curvature. But did you notice what else he exposed in that performance?
Oh, okay, so if the Earth were actually this size, the International Space Station would be orbiting about a half an inch above the surface. Felix Baumgartner, he would have been 2 millimeters above the surface of this globe.
If we assume that the beach ball he's holding is 2 feet in diameter, an 11 millionth scale model of the real ball Earth, then Baumgartner's 25-mile height would indeed be about 2 millimeters above the surface. But that means Neil is also pretty close to scale with the ISS, which he says would be about a half an inch above that beach ball Earth. Actually, it would be about 20 millimeters, or 3/4 of an inch. So now look where Neil's finger is when he's approximating Baumgartner's height and calling him out for saying he's at the edge of space and for using fisheye lenses to fabricate a curve where none exists in reality. He's actually holding his finger about 3/4 of an inch above the beach ball Earth, where the ISS would be. So every comical point he's making about Felix is also being made about the ISS. So now imagine the ISS is a microscopic dot on the tip of Neil's finger. They say a 43 millimeter lens matches the 55-degree field of view of the human eye. Any lens with a number lower than 43 is moving towards the fisheye lenses that Neil called Felix Baumgartner out for using. So what does a 55-degree field of view look like from the ISS on Neil's finger? This yellow oval represents the amount of Earth a normal camera lens would see from the ISS. So how are they producing images like this? And this? And this? Well, Tyson already told us, right?
They made sure to photograph him standing there with a really wide-angle lens, which curves horizontal lines. So in the photo, you see this curvature of Earth's surface, and he said, wow, he's in space, look at that. No, he's not. At that height, you don't see the curvature of the Earth.
So in just one television appearance, Neil took down the Felix Baumgartner jump, the deceptive practice of using fisheye lenses to fabricate curve, and the ISS. But he wasn't done yet. He then went on to take down every image of the entire Earth that we've ever seen.
You know, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out.
Yeah.
It gets wider in the middle. And so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially, it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
I'm not sure how a planet that supposedly formed by gravitational accretion could end up chubbier at the bottom, but in a single striking blow, Tyson obliterated every full Earth image any space agency has ever presented us with. The original blue marble, gone. The 1968 Apollo 8 Earthrise, gone. Same goes for the 2015 Earthrise taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the epic Discover images from 1 million miles away, and the image from Galileo taken from 4 million miles away. If it's not showing a pear-shaped oblate spheroid, then it's a fake. We learned that from the greatest astrophysicist the world has ever known. And even after all of this, our hero still wasn't done. He then went on to debunk the eyewitness testimonies of the people who say they have been to outer space.
You don't see stars in the daytime on Earth, not because they're not there, but because the atmosphere is aglow with scattered light from the sun. If you take away the atmosphere, the sun will still be there, but the sky goes dark. But when you get to the edge of the atmosphere is no longer between you and the rest of the universe, and the stars reveal themselves just as they would at night. Since the moon has no atmosphere, then a daytime picture, if you're there in the daytime of the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optic.
I don't remember seeing any.
The sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
And we could not see stars.
The sky, of course, was black. The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was.
We're in a vast sea of darkness, and the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
And the most unexpected thing, I think, was the blackness of space. I mean, it's the blackest black, and you realize just how small the Earth is in that blackness, and that was a real surprise to me.
I've often tried to explain the difference between darkness or blackness. Blackness is the endlessness of it all. It's hard to comprehend.
And if you can tear your eyes away from that and you look under your arm down at the rest of everything, it's an unfathomable blackness.
And finally, Tyson made it clear that we don't know what this magical hypothetical force called gravity even is.
What is gravity?
We have no idea. Okay, next question.
So our hero, Neil deGrasse Tyson, has single-handedly taken down scientism's explanation for star and planet formation. He destroyed the Eratosthenes fairy tale. He called out everybody who's ever claimed to have detected curvature from the Earth, from an airplane, or even from a high-altitude balloon. And in doing so, he exposed the deception of using fisheye lenses to fake curvature, and showed us how ridiculously close the ISS would be to the Earth, and how impossible it would be for their videos and photos to be legit. Then he called into question every image of the entire Earth we've ever seen, and the eyewitness testimonies of everyone who's claimed to have been to outer space. He even admitted that nobody knows what gravity even is. So is Neil deGrasse Tyson secretly a flat earther? Or is there maybe something to the claim that the Illuminati must hide the truth in plain sight? I'll leave that for you to decide.